Welcome everyone to the 2024 Vacation Rental Trends webinar hosted by Hostaway. I'm really pleased to have four experts in the vacation rental industry speaking here today. We have, of course, Marcus from Hostaway, CEO from Hostaway. Thank you, Marcus, for putting this on, and your amazing marketing team for putting everything together. It's always a really great webinar, so thank you for inviting us along. Thank you. And then we have Andrew from Wheelhouse, CEO of Wheelhouse. Thank you for coming, Andrew. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Then, of course, we have Francois from Enzo Connect. Welcome, Francois. Thank you for joining us. And Simon from AJL Atelier. So welcome, everyone. And just making sure we've got more coming in. Congrats to Marcus and his team. Yeah, congratulations, Marcus. You've had quite the year, haven't you? So, yeah, welcome, everyone. So to start the webinar, what I would love is I'd love us to talk about an overview of what's happened this year and where we are currently. And Simon, I'd like you to really kick us off and give us a kind of a picture. You know, I read somewhere on LinkedIn that between all of the people on this panel, we've been to 100 conferences or something over the last year. That's a lot of conferences, that's a lot of learning, a lot of conversations. So tell us what's actually happened this year for the industry and where we're at. Over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marcus, and also Jessica, for having us in this webinar tonight or this evening for me, but for morning for many others. There's probably only one person that beat me on conferences. That's probably Julie George from Australia, but she has a life. I have work. But apart from that, yeah, it's been tremendous. So the amount of intake that I've had over the conferences in Mexico, Australia, and everywhere else in the US, and just finishing DARM in Nashville last week, I think have given me a massive ability sort of to look at the market globally and in different ways. And look, there is not one message here for everybody who's here tonight. I would never make one statement. Where is the industry, right? The industry remains the way it is, fragmented, hyper-local, and it's global and it's different, right? So I cannot give a global perspective on the industry. We've seen data on Europe, we've seen data on the United States. I think on a macro level, we can see like we're living on the same planet, thankfully, because we know that is the restaurant on the moon is not funny because there's no atmosphere. But in the world, we're sharing a common space together. And one thing that we share as a business is it's all the same. So no matter where you go, Australia, Croatia, Latin America, US, and Europe, we're doing vacation rental. We're connecting guests with hosts. So this is no different. And the challenges we're facing with each other are no different. Technology challenges, adoption of technology, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the industry. So no matter where you're from here in the audience, don't worry, your pain is shared by 140,000 other property managers around the globe. And you don't think you're unique in terms of your guest complaints. Don't think you're unique in terms of your homeowner challenges. It's a unique world across the planet. And that literally came to my final conclusion for this year, having been in this industry for 20 years. On a high level, what happened in 23? I think I want to raise the first point I want to raise is global warming. It's concerning the hell out of me. I'm a father of 5. Global warming and a natural disaster had a massive impact on this industry. And I want to start with that. And we need to be super mindful of that. We have seen massive shifts. Southern Europe is losing. Northern Europe is winning just because it's too hot to travel. And I've addressed that in Nashville with Jamie Lane from AirDNA last week as well. And we see definite shifts. Second, AI, we're going to talk about that, has changed everybody's life. And it hasn't, well, you're either asleep or you're going to miss out, right? So, and you know, we have incredible people here with Andrew and also Francois. I saw Francois' speech in Australia, which was mind-boggling to think how AI is going to change this industry. And it's a big word, but for me, it's not a big word anymore. It has changed my life as a consultant, as an industry expert in the way I use it and the way I adapt it. We have spoiled owners, which we need to be super mindful about. the revenues we've seen for the owners for the last 2-3 years has been exponentially. So we need to make sure we're managing great relationship with homeowners, because they've seen revenue that they're probably not going to see for the next 1 or 2 years. And we're going to start a controversial here, because my outlook is not that amazing. We have seen softening in the market. ADR has come down. Literally, we've seen the numbers. We have statistics. ADR has come down. RevPAR has come down. Occupancy has come down. Supply has surpassed demand. What happens? The market starts to soft. We have seen a lot more investors coming in. 5 years ago, we've never seen a private equity firm in a vacation rental firm. And trust me, when HostAway went to market, AGL got extremely busy. So, you know, we have seen totally different dynamics in this market. So the financial market has a lot of interest in our industry, and they need to wrap their head around fragmentation and everything else. We have a lot of political unrest. For everybody to know, I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland, and we have geopolitical challenges, right? I mean, last year we talked about inflation. We talked about a recession. Marcus pushed back very heavy. I remember it was yesterday. It's already 12 months ago. And it's super cool to be back here again to have these conversations. But we need to, in the meantime, we have now 2 wars going, and not just one, that will have potentially a massive impact on oil prices, on many different things. We have a war in Ukraine and Russia. We have a war in Israel and Gaza and Palestine, and that's just not good for us, and we need to be mindful of that.
Thank you, Simon. That's a whole lot of information there, and a lot of it we're going to cover. We're going to look at AI, we're going to look at the geopolitical climate, we're going to look at climate change, we're going to look at owners, all of that through today's topic. And I just want to remind the audience that if you've got a question, just put it into the Q&A and we will get to answering it as best we can. And what if you are a manager and you want to put into the chat what you have found the most challenging about 2023, feel free to just put that in the chat. It'd be really interesting to see what everybody has felt about 2023 in terms of challenges. So back to this year and what we've just had. Andrew, can you give us a little bit of a flavor from your perspective of 2023?
Yeah, it's interesting because again, the panel here went to a lot of conferences, and we get the pleasure of speaking to a lot of businesses out there. I think the interesting part for me, my rough breakdown is that roughly 80 to 90% of operators are a little bit nervous about 2024. And I think there are areas of strength and areas of certainly weaker areas. On the supply side, we're probably going to see, so we'll talk about supply, demand, and booking window as like 3 things generally to be thoughtful about. But everything I'm going to share, Simon's exactly right. Our whole category is very local. So like I rarely talk about macro trends with any like, you know, take some salt for this. But on the supply side, it's very expensive to create a new home right now. We've seen supply slow after a couple of years of growth, and we're starting to see a lot of inventory actually fall back onto the market in places like Joshua Tree, where a lot of places are for sale that were brought onto the short-term rental market over the last couple of years. So on the supply side, good operators are probably going to do well as some newer competitors fall out of the markets this year, would be my guess. On the demand side, generally, I would say RevPAR seems to be off about 10% for folks. So if you're in that range, like that's normal, to be expected. And the most general stat you can throw there is like the smaller places, 1 and 2 bedrooms, are actually doing better at kind of maintaining that RevPAR than the larger places. And then the booking window almost everywhere is shrinking, is compressing, right? And I don't know if that's because more people are going back to office, or kind of this, like the heyday of post-COVID travel is slowing down a little bit. But generally booking windows are shrinking. So people are still getting that RevPAR in the smaller places, but it's coming a little closer to the stay date. So those are the most broad trends we're seeing. We are seeing people in certain markets doing a killer job with 1-night stays. So you're going to see aberrant behaviors everywhere. Your unique situation is, you'll have to kind of put it in context with your actual market, but those are the general trends we're seeing going into 2024.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And Marcus, so 23 has been quite the year for you and for HostAway. So tell us what you've seen this year and where you think we're at right now.
Thank you. Yeah, 2023 was quite a year. Thank you, Simon. I do remember it like yesterday. There was a lot of, just looking back at where we were in December 2022, people were awfully afraid of a recession and inflation. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to see the highest ever travel in the world in 2023. And that's going to happen whether people can afford it or not. And just Thanksgiving was 3 weeks ago. We had the highest ever air traffic in the US for one day. 3 million people got on a plane that day, which is the highest ever, which is exactly what I thought it would be. Now, the challenges that Andrew and Simon are talking about, those can coexist. We can have a huge amount of travelers, but at the same time, if we have a huge supply, then yes, RevPAR can indeed go down. At the same time, if we're struggling now, or if things are uncertain, then what will happen when the market goes south, if people stop traveling? Right now, we should embrace the fact that we work in the travel industry and people are traveling, and that's absolutely fantastic. Last year, I also predicted that the landscape for tech companies, and that's very relevant for vacation rentals, because a lot of the business that we run on today is related to tech. Very few people book their vacation without a website or an OTA, and very few businesses run without tech. Now, I said it's going to be incredibly hard to raise funding, except if you're an exceptional company, which is why I'm very happy we raised 175 million in 2023. Overall, the market as a whole, just like travel, has grown. If you look at the earnings of Airbnb, Booking, and Expedia, they all have record high revenues, and those are really the ones we should be looking at, the revenues, because that shows overall how good is the market. And it's a good reminder that even though competition isn't great for people who are already established in a market, it is important that our sector remains big, because let's say vacation rentals were declining, the overall revenues, and hotels were going up. Who do you think will get the more political power there? Who will get the sway when it's time to decide on regulation? Of course, it will be the hotels. So it's very good to see that the vacation rental keeps growing. And the downside of growing is, of course, that there will be more competition. But that is still just temporary. Those who are doing a good job, they will prevail.
Thank you, Marcus. Can I just clarify a little bit there, or put a kind of a different spin on it? Is, people are still traveling. I live in the UK. We've been full of Americans this year. Every plane, I think we've talked about this before, every plane is full when you travel yourself. Every restaurant is full. It seems like everyone's spending money. And in terms of travel, it's the thing that we never want to give up. And when life is a little tricky, when it's uncertain, when it's a little bit depressing, we won't give it up. We might not be able to go to, Cancun, but we might go to our local, an easier place to get to, but we'll still do something. And then something that Simon said the other day was around the debt. The debt. Simon, do you want to come in on that? Because you made a really good point that I think was a key data
absolutely.
point.
If I have any takeaways from the entire year, and we like to have debates here, and Marcus, you were right in many aspects. We don't want to talk about inflation and recession. We want to talk about what happened to the travel space, and you were right. But when I see the most scariest piece of data that I've seen in the entire year while traveling, going to conferences, was the one from Key Data Dashboard. Jason is showing what's the credit card balance of the US bank. Well, guys, the bad news is all that pent-up demand that was spent on travel happened on debt, okay? So in the lowest debt ratio that we have seen in the last 4 years was actually in Q1 of 2021, which was like at 650 billion credit card debt in the United States. Now we're at 800 billion. It's the highest debt ratio on credit cards this economy has ever seen. So for me, this is massive. So I'm just trying to say, and that's what we are consultants and advisor. Let's be cautious. We have seen ADR drops. We've seen drop of average length of stay. We are below 2019, gentlemen. We had 5 days in 2019 average length of stay. We're now at 4.5. We're below 2019 numbers. They've increased and come back down again. I don't want to put the devil on the wall. The only thing I want to give out to the industry, let's be cautious of what we have seen the last 2-3 years. I've stood up with an umbrella on stage at many conferences, said, guys, when it's sunny outside, take your umbrella. I am bullish. This is a massive opportunity for the professional property management industry to gain more owners, to say, hey, we take that burden away for you because we know how to revenue management. We know how to automate your business. We know how to tech enable your business. Give it up yourself. If your interest rates are going to busting you because you can't keep the asset, give it to someone who take care of it. So for me, I'm not having a bad outlook. I'm saying this is the time for professional property managers to come in and take these assets and manage these assets the best way possible because we know what we're doing.
So that's a really good point. And something else in terms of being cautious and the uncertainty, what do we think about the geopolitical, the fact that there are 2 wars, there's tension with China. Next year, 40 countries are going to have elections, something like 42% of the global GDPR. 41% of the global population are going to be voting in new leaders next year. There's so much uncertainty, going on in the world. What did you think there'll be an impact in terms of for short-term rentals in the day-to-day of management? Or do you think it's the kind of thing we can just, not be worrying about or thinking about? Who wants to answer on that?
Well, I can have a stab at this. Maybe one of the oldest in the crew here, and I've been around for a few years longer. That is not worrying me because that's just happens all day long. Yes, the election year will have an impact in the US, no doubt. But I think the political environment, we see definitely a very strong right move, but that can balance itself out very quickly on the other side as well. Like we've seen a lot of the left side, the Green parties have gained massive traction also in Germany. Now it's swinging the other way, going full right. That for me is not a massive worry. We need to be aware of it, but I wouldn't pin it down to say this is going to have a massive impact on our industry, because on the other side, it can also swing back on regulations. Let's face it, a lot of socialist countries have put tremendous regulations into place. Portugal, Spain is talking about Catalonia is making illegal to rent within the next 5 years. No tourist license anymore. This is driven by a socialist government. So I'm not taking a political stand here. What I'm saying is we need to be mindful of what is happening. We as an industry need to engage in lobbying and regulation conversations, but this can go either way. So that is not something I would pin it down.
Okay. Marcus, did you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, I wanted to counter Simon. I actually had to check up the credit card debt because it sounds incredible, 800 billion. It's I got bad news. It's actually over 1 trillion already in Q3. But
so bad to Jason.
but do keep in mind, let's just break it down. How much money are we talking here? How many hours do you need to work at McDonald's to pay off that debt? It's around $250 per person. Now, if you think about how many plane tickets can you buy for 250, not many. What about your vacation rentals? How many nights can you rent for 250? Well, not many. And if, let's say, the average person booked a plane ticket and took a vacation, well, probably not. But even then, that credit card debt is pretty small. 250 doesn't sound like an alarming number to me. I think one of the reasons why this industry, especially the data in the US, is showing us down is that there has been a dam bursting of exactly what was said here earlier. Americans going to Europe. I know there's a lot of people in America that didn't go in 2020, they didn't go in 2021, maybe not even in 2022, but they have made up for it this year, which means that there have been less tourism in the US. At the same time, the exchange rate, it hasn't been cheap for Europeans that normally would go to the US. Hasn't it been cheap this year? So this is why we see a softening in the rates in the US. This is one contributor, but we don't see the same thing in Europe.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to move on now. And this time last year, we would not have seen a post in the chat from, "Hi, I'm an AI assistant helping Daniel take notes for this meeting." Like, we would not have had that. We now have it. We've all seen it. It's really kind of common now. We've all got our little AI assistants, Fireflies, whatever. Enzo, Connect, Francois, I'd love to you to come in on this and talk to us a bit about what you predict AI will do for the industry next year. Remembering that, actually, can we talk also about the kind of the things that we'll understand as well about how it will impact business? But I'm going to let you start with this, please, Francois.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to use a quote from a good friend, Evan, from a company called Adaptive, who says, "Those who use AI will outperform those who don't." And I think, I don't know if he's the one who put out this quote, because I've seen it in a few other contexts, but I'm going to give him full credit for it. I think that's what we're going to see as a trend for 2024, both on the software vendor side of things, as well as the property managers. We're already seeing a peak of interest in figuring out how to leverage AI in your business. I think it's still a bit of a black box for a lot of people. It's a buzzword. It sounds interesting. It sounds like it could solve a lot of problems, but it's not clear yet how. And I think what we're going to see as a trend is normalization of data between systems, which will give more visibility to property managers. So we've talked a lot about fragmentation. We've had an amazing graph from both Wheelhouse and AJL on sort of all the different players in the space and so on, and the complexity of the vendor space. I think AI is going to bridge those gaps, is going to create those bridges between these different technologies, so that you can have more visibility on your day-to-day operations. It's going to become effectively a co-pilot to your business, whether it's figuring out information, asking simple questions. You know, how many nights did I get booked this month, and figuring out where this information is coming from. So again, it's going to help normalize a lot of these processes. I think there's going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors as well from it. You're going to get a lot of tech companies that are going to slap AI or buy the domain name .ai just so that they can be part of the race. So a certain amount of due diligence is going to be necessary from property managers to understand what problem they're actually trying to solve, so that they don't just buy AI for the sake of buying AI. And last but not least, you know, I talked about normalizing data. We've already seen AI. I mean, in the context of Wheelhouse or pricing revenue management systems, machine learning is already being used. It's there and it's been there. You've been using it for quite a few years. We're talking more about communication-driven AI, so normalizing text, normalizing data like graphs and numbers, and putting it in a way that you can communicate better with your staff, with your guests, and with other stakeholders in your business.
Thank you, Francois. I just want to read what Jesse Dermont has said in the chat. "I discovered how with some communication tasks, I'm having a blast with it, moving much faster to automate and deliver on communications." So
Yeah,
it's kind of
and
playing around.
just
Andrew, do you, yeah?
Oh, I was just going to add a little something. When I say, you know, communication, we think chatbots. That's kind of like the first thing that comes to mind. And obviously that is a direction that is absolutely going to happen. There's phenomenal companies, I forget the name, Bestie and so on, that are moving into that direction. But it's not just about automating communication that we're going to see. It's about normalizing data. What I'll give you an example is tracking the sentiment of conversations and guests that are having that are staying in your properties, understanding that at scale. Being able to understand at scale the types of reviews that you're getting and where you can improve on your day-to-day guest experience, your operations, and so on. And then connecting, again, different tools, different vendors, different platforms that don't share information, so you get a better picture of what's going on in your business. Sorry, little parentheses. Thank you.
No, thank you, Francois. Andrew, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I thought Francois covered it really well. It's going to help accelerate folks, and you can scale yourself, certainly. I think the other benefit for everyone on this call is AI is going to be really good at helping make software platforms more accessible. So whether it's customer support or the ability to more easily learn a platform, AI is going to be very helpful in that domain. And then it's also going to, what you're going to see with smaller teams building really advanced software products because their engineers are scaled, it should bring down your costs of software. And I know in 2024, a lot of people are concerned about costs, and software over the course of the years has gone from, probably a few of you had one software maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to many softwares now. It's going to be part of your cost conversation forevermore, but smaller teams building better software that you can use is ultimately very beneficial for your business. So it's a excellent new era of technology that is pretty interesting. Marcus.
Okay, I'm going to bring these guys in, but first we're going to do a little poll and just ask the audience how they're using AI, if they are, in what areas of their business. So we've got a poll that will come up, but we can keep talking while that poll happens. And Marcus, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say as a comment that I've been in online marketing for almost 2 decades now, and there's been many changes there going on. For example, when Google entered the space, they changed a lot of things, and they keep changing the world. Whoever today says this is what AI is going to do for us, this is what it's going to look like, they are going to be wrong. There are things that, well, there's a lot of new technologies. People are registering .ai domains. However, what's really important for a property manager, I think Shelley there asked the question, how do we use AI to market properties? What's really important is to stay aware of what's going on. If anyone remembers a few years back, Airbnb, they introduced these categories. They were trying to automatically categorize properties. They call them great views, or they call them beautiful pool. And it didn't work the first time, and property managers were really frustrated. I have a beautiful pool. How come I'm not in the beautiful pool category? This is exactly what you need to stay aware of. OTAs and pretty much anyone else, they will start using AI. You shouldn't be asking yourself only what tools do you need for AI, but do you understand how it works and how you best can take advantage when your competitors are not staying up to date with how AI works?
Thank you. Francois, you're very polite putting your hand up there. So come on, jump in.
I fully agree with Marcus, and I'll just say, and this might be, I apologize, Simon, if I steal your thunder on this one, is it changes the game of search. The answer, this was a friend of mine who told me this. He was like, how many Google searches what's the number of Google searches that is the right number of Google searches or responses? And the answer is 1. Why is it that when I search something on Google, I get 100 pages of different information? I'm looking for one thing. If I'm looking for a recipe of ratatouille and I have to navigate through videos of whatever and a ad on purchasing the new whatever pan and all of this jazz, when all I'm looking for are the ingredients, what do? I go to ChatGPT or OpenAI, I look up what are the ingredients for my ratatouille, and boom, that's all I need. So it changes the way we're searching information. We're already seeing, I say my generation, but I'm going to say our generation to make everyone feel young on this panel and make sure we're all, I know it's your birthday coming up, Simon, so 29 plus tax, if I'm not mistaken. It just changes the way we find information. So when I said normalize data between different systems, it's if you have to go and find something somewhere, you are no longer having to scour through so many different resources. You can get that information very quickly. This would change the game from marketing, how you market your properties, because now SEO and content, we can pump content at scale like crazy. You can write 10,000 blogs tomorrow. So how does that search ranking on Google, how does it affect it? Which means maybe we'll start seeing more and more video marketing. I think personally, the trend on that front is going to be a lot more around video and less around, the sort of TikTok experience and less around, content, SEO, and so on. So anyways, big changes. But I'll let Simon explain a bit more on the search side of things, because I know that's a topic you're big on.
Yeah, I would like to delve into that a little bit more and about the impact for OTAs and about how it will change the experience of being a guest looking for a property. I was actually on a webinar a couple of days ago where we talked about this and about the hyper personalization and around how Airbnb is planning now to be able to match properties when you search, rather than searching and having a list, the 3 top ones that are best suited for you, because they figured it, it's all the AI has worked out to figure out what you need. So serving up, just like you said, exactly what you want. Simon, do you want to jump into that and about how that's going to change? And
Yeah,
somebody
just-
has asked in the chat, you know, how are they going to get help with this?
Just very quickly on, so Francois, yes, he did steal my thunder, but we leave the youngers take it up. So absolutely, that's exactly the point I wanted to bring. So search, it's going to revolutionize. I just want to throw in, we also an educational conversation here. So I want to throw in another one before I answer your question, just very quickly, is touch points. So how is AI going to change the property manager's business? I think one thing that we talked in all the conferences about, how do you look at your guest touch points over a guest journey? Which ones do you want to automate and which ones do you want to personalize? And that's something you need to be super careful about, and especially with companies like Enzo and others who provide services in that guest engagement piece. Who are you as a property manager? Where do you want to automate, and where do you want to have personal touch points? And that's super important before you start addressing AI, because you can entirely outsource it and fully automate it, but the people will still realize they're talking to a machine at the end of the day, even though the language models got amazing. And so that's something I want to throw in as a takeaway here. Put your guest journey out, put your own journey out. What do you want to automate? Birthday cards and Christmas cards you can fully automate, but maybe there's certain things you want to have totally personalized. So, and AI can take care of all that, and then you want to personalize. So you want to use your human capital to put smiles on people's faces, and the rest you can automate. So that's something I wanted to throw back. So coming back to the large language models on search, I can only say I totally agree with Francois. So the way we need to think about how people searching a vacation rental, and if you're not part of that game, you won't be found. Okay. And large language models, I have to say though, let's not panic. I've tried them all. They're pretty shitty. I've used Expedia, I've used Kayak. The results are pretty bad. I've just used one on Expedia's model as well to search for a very specific home, what I need with a dog, 3 children, close to a golf course in this state in Spain. It says 0 availability. So obviously it's still broken, right? But it's getting there. So we need to be super mindful to the point that Francois mentioned. What is that? How is the search behavior? How does these AI models going to change the way we're going to search? Because ultimately you can see a dream picture on the internet about a house that you want, and you just paste that into the search box and say, I want this house. And that's eventually doable. So I think we need to be mindful of that. I'm not technical enough to say, okay, this is your strategy, but the way we search for homes is fundamentally going to change. And that will also be a massive challenge for the OTAs to deal with, and therefore brings other traction in the way we build different channels to find these guests. There's no questions about it. It's going to happen super fast. Last, but definitely not least, what blows me away the most is the compounding rate of AI technology. Think about a mobile phone compounds in technology twice in 2 years in terms of renewal of its tech. AI compounds every 3 months. So if you're asleep, guys, you're going to miss out on it. There's hands down, no question about it.
Francois?
Sorry, you know, I love this subject, so I keep raising my hand. I always talk about this subject. One quick thing is how disruptive this model. I see a few comments about people already starting to search on OpenAI instead of searching on Google. How disruptive this is to trillion-dollar companies. I mean, to the billion-dollar industries of search today. Google's business model is to provide you with as many clicks as possible. OpenAI's model is to provide you with as few clicks as possible. So it changes the world of advertisement, of marketing, of how you display, as Simon presented, your properties on OTA searching. It is revolutionary in that sense. And what I would say is, it all sounds great, but you as a property manager, how do you get started? How do you position yourself to be surfing on that wave? And my answer to that would be data warehousing. Figure out where your information, where your data is, understand if you are in control of it, or if a system is in control of it and you can't export that data. You were stuck with all of this sitting here. And if you ever decided to switch that system, goodbye to all of your data. Your data is what makes your property management a digital one, but also is what you should almost add to your, potentially not, but to your balance sheet. Like it's got a certain value to it. So figure out in order to start preparing for that wave, and be surfing when it's cruising while others are drowning, figuring out how to automate basic booking confirmation messages. I would really recommend thinking about how you're centralizing that data.
So where does this leave property managers who are building a direct booking strategy where they've got their own websites? You know, how are they going to manage this and work around this? Do we know, like, you know, what's the future there? Who wants to jump in there and help us out?
Can I hop in on that
Andrew,
front real
go
quick?
first.
Yeah, Andrew, then Marcus, please.
Cool. I mean, what Francois is articulating is an existential threat to OTAs, right? Does anyone here love paying OTA fees? No way, right? Well, people go to OTAs like Airbnb because they help you narrow down where you go to find a great property. Well, if it takes you time to search, and if that search can be replaced by a machine that's going out and finding you properties and bringing them right to you, what value does an OTA have? This is a existential threat. And if you did have a direct site, that machine can just as easily search and find you as it can go to an OTA. So I think this is a really big shift. I think it will value direct bookings because you will be more discoverable by machines. And that's just a crazy cool opportunity. It should, over time, degrade an OTA's ability to take fees from your business. So really big, interesting shift.
Marcus, can you add in here, please?
Absolutely, that's a great point, Andrew. But keep in mind, these machine learning models, they take data from many different sources, and they tend to go by the most reputable and big ones first. So if you don't have your own website, you should probably have one. But if you're not listed on all the OTAs, and if you don't have the relevant data in there, you need the nice pictures in all of them, and you need the right description. Simon's golf course and room for 3 children. That's what you need everywhere. That's how the machines will find you. I just wanted to mention, because I find the subject super interesting, that is not all innovative and great. This is we're going to see the beginnings of a revolution over the coming years. This is a way for companies. AI will allow them to basically be more efficient, which means less jobs. So, and the tech space is going through that right now, where most tech companies are either not hiring or not giving raises, not giving promotions, or they're letting people go. And there's one single reason for that, and that's AI. The fact that a lot of hires that are typically done are not done for the needs of today, but the needs of tomorrow. But now the needs of tomorrow and how to fulfill them is all unknown. And a lot of those needs are going to be fulfilled by AI. I'm just mentioning this because if your primary traveler target group here happens to be tech workers, then you may want to think again and see, can you attract other types of travelers?
Thank you, Marcus. We've got a really important comment that just came into the chat that I have to read out. If there was a contest for who wears the best t-shirts during webinars, Marcus would win 100% of the time. So there you go. That was really important. Needed to say that. I mean, there is so much on this topic. There's something that kind of makes me nervous when people say they're searching in ChatGPT, is that it's not accurate. You know, the information that comes back really is not accurate. It does make things up. So it does, it does worry me that, but you know, I'll leave that. I think we need to kind of move on now. And one of the topics that we've touched on earlier is about supply and about how there is much more supply. And Hostaway, Marcus, you recently did a trends report that talked about competition as being the biggest challenge that property managers have faced this year. Somebody also earlier in the chat said, what about the hotels? We're seeing, you know, or Marriott coming in. There's all sorts of hotels that are doing service departments, you know, apart hotels coming into the space as well. Obviously, we had Marriott for a while, but we're seeing more, and I know that there are more in the pipeline. So let's talk about supply, and then we'll move on to owners as well. So who wants to go first on what's going to happen next year with supply?
I can quickly preface by just saying we're going to stop seeing amateur property management and we're going to start seeing more and more professional property management. I think the days of just putting Airbnb up, and there will be exception markets like Paris, for example, in the summer. All my friends are putting up their little 1-bedroom studio apartments online just so they could cover rent for the next 4 months, because Americans are coming to see the Olympic Games and they figured, why not get out of the city and make some money? So we'll still see that trend that the vacation rental, specifically Airbnb, has fostered. But we're seeing more and more professional operators, people building their own companies, their systems, their processes, in-housing their cleaning staff, thinking about how they scale, and scale being not, for every new property I add a new staff member, but rather how do I make this really a scalable management business. So we're going to see a shift from I'm just going to run a few properties and be a co-host and make some money on the side to I'm a professional business. I'm trying to drive revenue. I'm trying to drive a brand awareness. I know who my guests and audience are, and that would be my push for that. But
yeah, I would totally agree with you on that, Francois. I think one thing we need to be realistic about is that only 20% of total supply is professionally managed. So we see still massive long tails. And I believe this, as I said at the beginning, this is opportunity in terms of supply that the professionals are going to win, because I also think the professionals have a better chance to stand regulations instead of the individual. We've seen that in New York and any other places. So the professional management industry needs to win supply. It's very hard, Jessica, to give a standard answer across the globe what is happening to supply, because every market is different. But the other thing I would like to add is that we're seeing in our work as consultants is that the supply is converging faster and faster. Hotel inventory, corporate housing, STR, and that is great news, because I love that, right? So it's going to be more institutionalized as well. We're seeing more capital coming into the STR space to institutionally own the business as well. I never think that we will see massive chunks of institutional owned short-term rentals, never, because it's just very difficult to scale. But we see a shift in how the supply is being managed. There was a big discussion last week in Nashville on purpose built, especially in the United States. That's great. That works super well. Hotels are wrapping their heads around. In Europe, you see a lot of conversion from 3-star hotels into multifamily housing with flexible living, STR, long-term. So I think we in 24, as things get more challenging for all hospitality verticals, we see further, when we talk about supply, we see further convergence on supply. So what I'm predicting is that STR, institutional invested, corporate housing, and hotels will even get further together from a supply standpoint.
Thank you. What about the Airbnb friendly buildings in the multifamily? Do you guys know much about that? Think much about that?
I can speak to that. So the Airbnb friendly buildings you're talking about, where people can rent but also easily list their home on Airbnb, or list their apartment on Airbnb, right? So Airbnb has been working for years on supply creation, particularly in urban areas, around apartment buildings, right? And I think there's really interesting notes. I mean, the great convergence that Simon is referencing, I think what you're going to see is hotels. You're crazy not to have some exposure now to distributed single family homes, right? Like, look what happened during COVID, how urban areas were decimated and distributed areas succeeded, right? So hotels are wise to come into our space. And Airbnb, you see moving into, maybe they went into mid-length during COVID, and maybe now people are talking about, is there a rental product coming from Airbnb too? So there's this really interesting convergence. I think Airbnb and all OTAs it'll always be in their best interest to do whatever they can to create supply specifically that flows to their unique channel. And Airbnb is, in my opinion, ahead of the game in terms of the OTAs in doing that.
Marcus, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think this is a very fascinating topic, and it's very close to my biggest interest, which is real estate. But there is going to be a lot of uncertainty on the market because over the last couple of years, we've seen very clear trends. There was a trend to get out of the cities in 2020 and to get into the rural. And then there was a trend to go on vacation and go to the beaches and the mountains. And now it seems people are going a bit everywhere. If you go to a city, the hotel is going to be fully booked, but the short-term rentals are also going to be fully booked. And if you go to a beach location, there's going to be people there too. And this is what causes confusion. There's no clear trends right now in the market. Yes, hotels are entering the short-term rental space. Short-term rentals and long-term rentals are converging, but there isn't really a clear trend right now. And that means that there's a lot of opportunity to succeed, but also a lot of opportunity to fail. I think, for example, any private equity group that thinks they can just come in and buy up a bunch of homes or build them and rent them out and then succeed, when we've seen proof that massive property managers simply can't scale on a national level. Whoa, 3 hands up. What did I say here? Yeah, that's just not going to work. And there's going to be a lot of losers in this game, but probably they are going to have very deep pockets, which is you just need to make sure you're aware of what's going on in the market and make sure you don't end up as a casualty there.
Thank you. I've never known, guys, for you to be so polite that you're putting your hands up when you're wanting to come in. So I'm really appreciating that. Andrew, I'm going to let you come first, but make it quick. And then I'll let Francois come in, then Simon, if that's okay.
Yes, the quick hit. Marcus, how many days were you on the road last year?
This year, 153 so far.
Right. And myself, I think we are at 120. And we talked yesterday about this new era where people are taking more trips, you're living more on the road. I really do think that's unique distributed inventory is in, right? I think the long-term trends in our space are extremely good. I know we talk a lot about what's going to happen in 2024, recession or global unrest, whatever people are worried about. Remember that building a great business here, you are sitting in what consumers want to buy, where investors want to come in, and you have a defensible business in the sense that your business is hard. It's really hard to be a great operator. There's still a lot of room for well-managed, beautiful supply. Tons of room. That's all.
Francois?
Well, the quick thing I was just going to say is there is a trend happening in terms of guest behaviors and how they're traveling. And specifically, if you look at different types of demographics, with my generation traveling with shorter periods of time, but more trips. So they'll do quick stays, 2, 3, 4-night stays multiple times throughout the year, if not throughout a month. And we're no longer in that traditional, I'm taking my 2 weeks vacation going to Hawaii, to quote exactly what Alex said yesterday from Wednesday on a podcast with Wheelhouse. We're looking at a different behavior of travel. Now, whether this is bleisure, business, leisure, because you're traveling for work and you might stay a couple extra nights for fun, or whether it's just because you have that extended weekend where you can stay in a different location. Travel is easy now. It's not difficult to travel. Everything is online. You can go to the airport and you can buy a ticket on your phone. You get a boarding pass on your phone. Everything is more seamless. And costs haven't risen that much. It's still comparable, and we have free money from post-COVID that we're now maybe out of. But that's a different discussion. I'll let Simon follow up on this.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is a data point from the recent research from Deloitte Corporate Travel Report. Fact of the matter is the way we consume hospitality has changed, and it's going to stay that way. So everybody out there needs to think about what's the consumer behavior, how do we consume hospitality? Fact is that still in 2023, 2.2 days per week are spent away from work, full stop.
Thank you. Yeah, and they all have to stay somewhere during that time. So before we're going to move on to a new topic, Marcus, do you want to jump in before
Yeah,
we
I
move
just
on?
wanted to say thank you, Andrew. You proved a great point there of how the trends are currently. There's many different trends. Yes, on one hand, people are traveling more flexibly and for different reasons than before. But at the same time, there's back to office trend. And that is pretty much the opposite. It means you travel less. But just last week, I was in London. I went to visit an office. I stayed in a hotel. I was there only two nights. And that's a perfect example of how these are they're not exclusive. There's many different things going on at the same time. And that's why there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, because people don't know which of these trends are going to stay stronger than the others.
And I guess to sum that up, consumer behavior hasn't settled down yet into any kind of pattern that we can work out. Now, before we move on to the next topic, we actually haven't seen the results of our poll about AI. So let's just have a quick look and see what people are saying. So, you know, quite a lot not currently using AI, which matches what you guys found out in your trends report. Guest communication being the top one. Second is marketing. Third is research and business intelligence, and then operations. So, okay, that's interesting. Now, moving on, and I know that when we spoke yesterday, and also just from having different conversations with all of you, really, one of the key themes, predictions for next year is love your owners, look after your owners, because that's, you know, really that's the most important relationship that you have. And can we talk a little bit more about that? About owners? And actually somebody put in the chat also, Drea Cooper said, is there a way to prospect properties with operators are wanting out? Now I realize I've just given you two things here. So one is that some managers might be tired and wanting to leave. It's been a really difficult year. Next year is also going to be challenging. So we've got that potential for getting inventory. But then the other is about looking after owners and really developing those relationships. So Simon, I'm going to let you jump in on here and tell us what you kind of predict on both those fronts for next year.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short, running time. And, you know, managing 4 alpha animals is challenging. Jessica, you're doing a great job. So number one, most quoted quote this year from Jason Sprinkle, made in May: if you don't have owner relations, you need to build them now, otherwise you lose the game. And it's just proven itself. So be transparent. Homeowners have been spoiled. We have a lot of spoiled homeowner, which I talked about in the opening note, and you need to be transparent so they're not feeling. So you make them part of the game. Use data points, use wheelhouses data, show them what is happening out there, and just be totally transparent and build this relationship. You know, homeowners don't want to be pulled over the table anymore. They want to be transparently spoken to when things go down, because otherwise your churn will go through the roof. So 2 things: we will see churn definitely go through the roof. We still have markets like Croatia who use 5 property managers for 1 unit. So that's the other side of the equation. So there's nothing exclusive because of that purpose, and that's a cultural thing. So I think so total transparency, make the owner part of your game. That's the second. I totally agree with you. I spoke to many people in Nashville, also to others who do M&A and see the market in different lights as we do. This is going to be a massive year on M&A. We see probably massive churn rates that we have never seen before. There's a lot of distressed assets. There's people who are tired, to your point, Jessica, who will sell their business. And we're seeing it inbound as we speak. Even today, I just had a call who said, hey, I want to get out of this game, even though the prices might be a little bit lower. And hey, that's a huge opportunity. So for any hungry people, younger people, like Francois' culture generation, these guys are hungry. This is now a downturn. This is a massive opportunity. Ramp it up, buy some businesses, change the way you run these. I mean, we're consulting businesses who have been in the business for 30 years. Every step of their process is manual. It's crazy. So, and they're tired because technology is challenging. This is challenging. Everything is challenging. We have all the solutions to run a smooth business. So I think we will see some generation changes as well, and we'll see massive M&A activities in 2024.
Thank you, Simon. Looks like you might have a customer in the chat there too. So go and head over and look at that. So Marcus, tips on how managers can really love on their owners this year and really focus on that. Do you want to share something with us there?
No, I just wanted to thank Simon for pitching why everyone should use HostAway as the property management system. That's exactly why. The property owners, they are facing a lot of uncertainty, and one thing that we didn't quite discuss here is sustainability. There's a lot of things. I was 2 weeks ago in Madeira, and they were struggling with their forest fires. Now, that's not only Madeira, that's a lot of different places. At the same time, we have hurricanes and earthquakes, and you may think these things are not coming to you, but just make sure you're good friends with the property owners before one of those things happen. Another thing that a lot of people will start looking at, I do agree with Simon that spending has gone up and people have been spending too much. I think next year people will start looking at where they are spending. Big companies have already been doing it in 2023. They bought a bunch of different tools and they have been cutting back. They've been deleting everything they don't use. Consumers will start doing it in 2024, and that includes the homeowners. So make sure that when they go through their owner statements that they understand everything, that everything is transparent. Once again, something that Hostaway can help with. Sorry for the promotion there. This is going to be really important. But most of all, talk to them. Ask them what their plans are. Ask if they're planning to buy new properties. Because a lot of properties are going to change owners next year. Right now, there's a standstill in the real estate market, but we're already seeing interest rates coming down. There's going to be a flood of properties changing hands. Just make sure that you're well positioned for that, and that more properties come to you than the ones you lose. And you can do that by building a good community among your owners.
Yeah, thank you. We've also had a couple of comments in the chat about property managers that are finding owners just coming to them. You know, and I would presume those are owners that have been trying to do it themselves and realized how hard it is. So they're looking for a manager to take it over. Francois, was there something you wanted to add? You had your hand up, then you've
I
put
didn't
it
want to
down.
Stay there.
Can I just say one comment first that we've had from Heather Brown? We've had 3 properties change owners in the last 4 months. So that changing of owners, you know, is increasing, and it's always a new relationship that you have to build as well. But sorry, Francois, I interrupted you.
Well, I'm just going to preface on what Marcus said so perfectly in 2 specific words he mentioned, which was transparency and community. And transparency being you have the information, you have this data, you know what's going to happen to a certain extent with these properties. Be transparent about it with these owners. Present them what the new plans are going to look like. You have a 2-sided marketplace. You have 2 customers. You have the guests and you have the owners. And while you could focus on the guests for the past 2 years because you were making the owners so much money, it didn't really matter if they were happy or not. Things have changed. And so now you need to reset those expectations. And a little shout out to a friend and customer and property manager in Australia that I got to meet a few weeks back, Tim Mortimer, who actually organizes a not just a webinar, an in-person meetup with his owners. And they get to talk about what they're happy about, what they're not happy about, and so on. So if you're not already organizing a webinar, I'm not saying a webinar with your guests because I think they have other things to do, but a webinar, at least with your owners, or some sort of community building with those owners, then that's one first actionable step that you can take.
So this ties us in. Owners will be nervous about regulations. And we've just had Shelley Wilson say, are you familiar with what is happening in BC with the government restricting short-term rentals? It's also happening in Barcelona, in Portugal, in Scotland, in other areas. So regulations for next year, it is scary because there is a really challenging time, not for everybody, but for certain parts of the world where people are operating. So in terms of making sure that owners are, you can't really do much about it if the regulations are coming, but if you've got owners that are nervous that it might happen in your area, I presume there's also, room for making sure that they're part of that professional community and that. Simon, do you want to put anything on the regulations bit here and particularly how that might link in with looking after owners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, that falls back to the transparency we all talked about. I mean, owners need to know, we need to actively inform, and we need to engage owners as well into regulations need advocacy. Advocacy needs everybody's involvement. We just need to be mindful. I think we have totally underestimated, and that includes us as well, to what regulation can have an impact. At the end of the day, as I said at the beginning, it's moving left and right, also politically. So, one day it can change because, certain laws will be passed through And then a year later, they realize the tourists are not coming, the tourist tax is dropping. And and in all cases, it hasn't solved the housing problem, the budget housing problem of any destination, any city around the world. You can take Amsterdam, you can take Paris, you can take London, you can regulate the hell out of it. So I think you need to be mindful about it. You need to inform transparently, and you need to be engaged in all the conversations that are happening about regulations. Because the point that I have at the end of the day, hotels are hostile. They want you to check in, stay there for all your stay, spend all your money in a house, and then leave again. STR produces more GDP to the community than anybody else. People shop, they consume, go to restaurants, they just sleep at the STR, maybe cook food they buy locally. So the STR at the end of the day is producing better GDP, creates more jobs than a freaking hotel room. And that's what we're missing in the conversation with the lobbyists. We're not good enough in actually communicating our value proposition to anybody who is involved into this, because the STR business produces more value to a community than a hotel when it comes to employment and everything that happens in the destination. And we need to be mindful of that. We need to talk about that.
And we are we're appalling at communicating that message at the moment. Absolutely. So that's fundamental to get that message on local levels, national levels, regional levels, industry-wide levels, getting that message across, not internally to ourselves, but actually to the ones that the decision makers, the influencers of the voting, etc. Now, we've just gone a little bit over time, and we are just going to do a few more minutes. Marcus, though, do you want to come in on that before we get on to the final topic?
No, it's okay.
No. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up, but what I'd love to do is end on a little bit of a high and start to look at what we're feeling optimistic about, because there is a lot to feel optimistic about, despite what we said about the uncertainty, the cautiousness, the challenges, etc. So what do you guys feel that we can be really optimistic about going into 2024? Who'd like to go first?
I'll hop in. I actually think the tenor of this group is I'm very optimistic about the long-term trends in the space. That's like the first place to start. I think when you look at consumer demand, again, unique distributed inventory is in. Our generation wants a place they can say that they can photograph. Already Airbnb was a merchandising revolution where it really became important to have 24 great photos of your home, right? So I think consumers want the properties that you are creating. Marcus and I have been on the road a lot this year. Everyone here has. In every market I go to, I'm underwhelmed by the quality supply. I still think a ton of high quality supply needs to be created, and the bar can keep going up there. So I would say, and lastly, I think the investment landscape of people coming into this space, this is the place real estate and hospitality investors want to be. So I am definitely long-term bullish on the category. Keep building a great business, and your software costs and OTA costs are going to come down. So keep it up.
That's very optimistic. So that's great. Thank you. Francois?
I hate to, I think the expression is beat a dead horse, but I think AI is going to be the next big wave for 2024. Not to bring it up again too much, but I think you're going to see a huge revolution on that from every single company, both here on this webinar and in general. At least the ones that will survive 2024. Fully agree with Andrew on the type of inventory and the sort of great convergence that I've heard you speak about quite a few times, Andrew. And it is not just a fascinating subject, it is happening as we speak. And it's a great way to combat regulations and, of course, potential issues with climate change and so on, which we've addressed a bit. So those would be my two big focus, is really get going with AI, figure out what you need on that front, and then see how you can further diversify to meet a new audience that is coming to stay with your vacation rentals.
Thank you, Francois. Simon?
Well, I hate to agree with Andrew and Francois because we like debates. I love these two friends. We spent a lot of time this year together in all places of the world. I could not agree more. I would like to add a third one. Any downturn helps professionalism. End of story. So, this is the time for this is what we're about. My company, we want to professionalize STR. That's all we want to do. and educate and help and push in all different directions. And I think any downturn, any uncertainty, the entry barrier in our industry has been far too low. Here's a marketplace, throw an apartment on it. You need zero education. You can be as silly as ever. You just need one property and you're off to the races and you can call yourself a property manager. This is not good. Okay. And I've been in the professional management space for 20 years. I've ran the largest property management company in the world with 48,000 units. This is not good. So we need to do something about it, educate and professionalize. And as now the winds turn to the point that Marcus made, the long tail, the people have just gone in it because it's fun. It's like Uber, you need a car. A vacation rental, you need an apartment and you're off to the races. This is not good for our industry. That's why we regulated the hell out of it, because the professional manager is suffering from that. Because anybody who has a bad experience in a short-term rental, the entire industry suffers from it. And no matter if you booked it on booking.com, on Verbo, I won't even mention the other channel. End of story. So we need to be really mindful, and the opportunity for 24, let's continue to professionalize it, tech-enable the business, deliver a great consistent product, guest journey, and a good experience, and then we're off to the races. So I totally agree with the opportunism and the optimism that Andrew has shared and Francois. This is going to be a great year, but we need to lift the game.
So thank you, Simon. I'd also add the good experiences for the community within where you've got your property, that you're operating your property. So for the neighbours, all of that, it's not just the guest experience, it's the experience for the owner, also for the community, the neighbourhood that you're in. And Marcus, last but not least, I'd love to hear what you're feeling really optimistic about for 2024.
Well, first of all, to Sergio, who did not hear anything about Latin America, you're one year behind. You should watch just Google for HostAway 2023 predictions webinar, and you'll find last year's discussion. We talked about Latin America and how massive it's going to be in 2023. What I'm really excited about is I certainly do hope that we get some of this amateurism out of this market and more professionalization. I've stayed in 16 short-term rentals and 3 hotels. Yes, 3 hotels this year. And still, for some reason, you know what to expect in a hotel. Even if it's a moldy shower, that's okay if you pay for that. But in a vacation rental, you can have a fantastic rental, but then in one room, the air conditioning is so loud that nobody can sleep there. I don't understand how this is happening today when people are saying that there's not enough demand, and these are I'm not staying in badly rated properties. I'm staying in good properties. It's just guests don't tell you the full truth. So please go and stay in your properties and see if they're really giving a good experience. Also on the regulation piece, I had one of my least favorite Airbnb experiences this summer. I went to Prince Edward County. It's a big island in the Thousand Islands region in Ontario, Canada. Lovely cottage country, but they decided to outlaw everyone new to the market. It's called grandfathering. It basically means got mine, screw the rest. And that means that if you're managing a vacation rental, you get to continue, but anyone else doesn't. Now, the place we stayed at was pretty nice, but it was an incredibly depressing experience because we went to the vineyards, we went to the restaurants, everyone was complaining. Every place was completely empty on Friday night, on Saturday night, on the top season, and they were all asking, where are all the tourists? Well, when you look at a map, you realize there's no hotels there, and suddenly there's only a couple of places to rent. Yeah, that's what happens if short-term rental property managers are not engaged in the community and make sure that people understand to make the right decisions. The good news is we're seeing some of these being reverted. A lot of these regulations are changing, and sometimes they even change for the better. Sometimes they realize they went one step too far, and the restaurants had to shut down. So yeah, that's what I'm very hopeful for in the future. Also, one thing that I think is really great is the fact that we have seen uncertainty in the interest rates, and those will continue. The reason why it's great is that we have been a standstill. If you know any real estate brokers or tech companies recently, things have not been good because interest rates have been going up. Now it seems they're stabilizing, starting to go down. We're going to see inventory start moving. I'm happy because that means that most likely I'll get to acquire a couple of competitors or other companies next year. But it's also really good for every single property manager, because if we can get interest rates back down to a somewhat more reasonable level, let's say below 7%, below 6%, below 5%, that's when inventory will start moving. And the number of real estate transactions has been so low in the last 6 months that there's a massive amount of transactions waiting to take place. And this is your opportunity as a property manager to grab those new owners and offer your services.
That ends us on a fantastic note, Marcus, really positive, and really, you know, there's so much to think about there for everyone in the webinar. I'd like to thank you all for being such great panelists and really sharing your insight. Thank you very much. And thank you, Marcus, to you and the HostAway team for hosting this webinar. And I know it's part of your monthly, you do one every month, you have a webinar, and this is a special kind of end of year one, but it's really been great to be here. And thank you to the audience. Really, it's been great to have all the interaction, and I'm sorry we haven't been able to get to all the questions, but we have been reading them, so it's been great to have them, and we have brought in what we can. So thank you, everyone, and happy birthday for Simon for tomorrow, who has his birthday tomorrow. Hope you all have a great Christmas and holiday season, and all the best for 2024. So thank you.